Welcome to U.S. History 1. This is Unit 1, Part 1A video, and it is all part of Part 1 as far as the notes are concerned. You can see the notes in Google Slides, don't forget. In this section, this PowerPoint, we'll be talking about the New England colonies, which are, of course, in the northeastern part of the United States, as we talk about Massachusetts, Rhode Island, etc., etc. All right, English settlements. So the English were behind when you compare them to the Spanish, which is what we talked about last chapter. The first attempt for the English to settle in the North America, I was going to say the Americas, but in North America was at Roanoke, which is located in southeast. All right, it's a small island. All right, and there's a drawing of the island at the time period. You're off the coast of North Carolina. And in 1585, 100 people crossed the Atlantic from Great Britain to settle there. All right. This attempt failed. They lasted about a year, and then they decided to return to England. Right. So Roanoke won, failure. Right. They tried again at Roanoke. Right. This time, 1587, a man named John White would lead the colonists to Roanoke, and they would settle there. All right. It's here at this colony that you have the first English-born child, all right, and her name was Virginia Dare, first colonist born in the Americas. All right. And there's a picture of her baptism, all right, and you see as everybody's gathered to celebrate her baptism, and which would have taken place shortly after her birth. All right. White sails back to England, and the objective there was to get more supplies, and then he would return to the colony. Well, with the trip over, getting the goods, the supplies, he was gone for 3 years. When he returned, the colonists were gone. The buildings were still there, but they doesn't look like they had been lived in for a while. And so it's in second Roanoke is also a failure. The only thing they really found was the word Croatoan carved on a nearby tree. There's a drawing of it, Croatoan, right? And that's the only thing they could find. Although they have done studies and they searched, no one knows what happened to the colonists of Roanoke. So the English are going to try again. This time the colony will be known as Jamestown. And there's a drawing, painting of the Jamestown colony as it started. Jamestown was named after the King of England, King James, who is also the first one to, he didn't do it himself, but to order the Bible translated from its original languages into English. So you will hear people that go to church refer to the King James Version of the Bible. That's him. Jamestown, Virginia, also named after him. It's 1607. The charter was signed in 1603. 105 people sail to Virginia and settle and start the colony of Jamestown. Roanoke had its problems and, of course, failed. Jamestown won't fail, but they did have their problems as well. The main reason for coming was looking for gold. Remember that the Spanish had found a lot of gold and silver while they conquered the Aztec and Incan empires. Right? And so when the colonists came to Jamestown, they were first looking for gold, and they got so busy looking for gold that they didn't plant any crops or prepare for winter. And as we know, the northeast of the United States is a lot different than central Mexico or South America when it comes to weather. There were tribes nearby, and the settlers had quarrels with them. The relations improved as they started to intermingle a little bit. The daughter of the chief, Powhatan, his daughter Pocahontas, which I'm sure you've heard because of the Disney movies, she married one of the settlers, and his name was John Rolfe. Unlike the Disney version where she married John Smith was a real person, and he was one of the leaders of the colonists, but his relationship with Pocahontas was one of more like father and daughter, and more like they were related. John Rolfe is the one that married her. Right? And there's a picture of Rolfe and Pocahontas, painting, I should say. That's Powhatan. Once the settlers had gotten there and working with the Indians a little bit, the one thing they found that grew really well in the Jamestown area was tobacco. All right? And so as they grow the tobacco, it became rather popular. It was becoming very popular back in England, and so it's a cash crop. And Jamestown, founded for economic interests, becomes basically based on a tobacco plantation, and they would grow tobacco to ship back to England. Right? Eventually, the colony itself becomes economically successful. In Jamestown, they would have a representative government. Males were allowed to vote if they owned property. Ladies, sorry, you're not allowed to vote. And if you were a male and you didn't own land, you were not allowed to vote. Right? They had an elected legislature. They called it the House of Burgesses. Right? Women, as far as the colony was concerned, remembering that it was originally set up as looking for gold and silver, so there weren't a lot of women. And so what the Virginia Company did was they found 100 women to volunteer, and they sent them to Jamestown in 1619. And the idea was these women came looking for husbands. Right? The men were already here, and they would start meeting, and if they got married, the men would have to pay 150 pounds. Remember, that's English money, right? So 150 pounds. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at this wrong. 150 pounds. I was going to say the money, but they don't have a lot of money. Tobacco. They would give 150 pounds of tobacco to the Virginia Company because they found a wife. All right, and we would say today, of course, that would be unacceptable. All right, but that's how they did it. All right, and as far as that goes, women really took care of the basic necessities of the colony. They made the clothing. They would prepare the food, and any medicine that they had, the women are doing all of that while the men are out farming and taking care of the crops and the fields. Right? Looking at their health and mortality rate, a lot of women died in the colony from the hard work, and a lot of women died in childbirth as well.